His star carried him away. He walked confidently at the open gate, and contemptuously thrust aside with his foot the shaggy, husky little sheep-dog, who flew at his leg with a hoarse bark, more as a matter of form than with any real intentions. Along a wooden plank he went to the covered porch which led like a sentry-box to the yard, and by 3 decaying wood steps he went up to the tiny entry. Here, through a tallow candle, or something in the way of a night-light was burning somewhere in a corner. It did not prevent Ivan Ilyitch from putting his left foot, just as it was, in its galosh, into a galantine which had been stood out there to cool. Ivan Ilyitch bent down, and looking with curiosity, he saw that there were 2 other dishes of some sort of jelly, and also 2 shapes, apparently of blancmange. The squashed galantine embarrassed him, and for one brief instant the thought flashed through his mind whether he should not slink away at once. But he considered this too low. Reflecting that no one would have seen him, and that they would never think he had done it, he hurriedly wiped his galosh to conceal all traces, fumbled for the felt-covered door, opened it, and found himself in a very little ante-room. Half of it was literally piled up with greatcoats, wadded jackets, cloaks, capes, scarves, and galoshes. In the other half the musicians had been installed: 2 violins, a flute, and a double bass, a band of 4, picked up, of course, in the street. They were sitting at an unpainted wooden table, lighted by a single tallow candle, and with the utmost vigor were sawing out the last figure of a quadrille. From the open door into the drawing-room one could see dancers in the midst of dust, tobacco smoke, and fumes. There was a frenzy of gaiety. There were sounds of laughter, shouts and shrieks from the ladies. The gentlemen stamped like a squadron of horses. Above all the bedlam, there rang out words of command from the leader of the dance, probably an extremely free and easy and even unbuttoned gentleman. "Gentlemen, advance! Ladies, chain! Set to partners!" And so on, and so on. Ivan Ilyitch, in some excitement, cast off his coat and galoshes, and with his cap in his hand went into the room. He was no longer reflecting, however. For the first minutes nobody noticed him. All were absorbed in dancing, and the quadrille to the end. Ivan Ilyitch stood as though entranced, and could make out nothing definite in the chaos. He caught glimpses of ladies' dresses, of gentlemen with cigarettes between their teeth, and caught a glimpse of a lady's pale blue scarf which flicked him on the nose. After the wearer a medical student, and with his hair billowing in all directions on his head, pranced by in wild delight, and jostled violently against him on the way. He caught a glimpse, too, of an officer of some description, who looked half a mile high. Someone in an unnaturally shrill voice shouted, "Oh, Samodova!" as the speaker flew by, stamping. It was sticky under Ivan Ilyitch's feet. Evidently the floor had been waxed. In the room, which was a very small one, there were about 30 people. But a minute later the quadrille was over, and almost at once the very thing Ivan Ilyitch had pictured when he was dreaming on the pavement took place. A stifled murmur, a strange whisper passed over the whole company, including the dancers, who had not yet had time to take a breath and wipe their perspiring faces. All eyes, all faces began quickly turning towards the newly arrived guest. Then they all seemed to draw back a little and beat a retreat. Those who had not noticed him were pulled by their coats or dresses and informed. They looked round and at once beat a retreat with the others. Ivan Ilyitch was still standing at the door without moving a step forward, and between him and the company there stretched an ever-widening empty space of floor strewn with countless sweetmeat wrappings, bits of paper, and cigarette ends. All at once a young man in a uniform, with a shock of flaxen hair and a hooked nose, stepped timidly out into the empty space. He moved forward, hunched up, and looked at the unexpected visitor exactly with the expression which a dog looks at its master when the latter has called him up and is going to kick him. "Good evening, Salmondova. Do you know me?" said Ivan Ilyitch, and felt at the same time that he had said this very awkwardly. He felt, too, that he was perhaps doing something horribly stupid at that moment. "Your Excellency," muttered Salmondova. "To be sure. I've called in to see you, quite by chance, my friend, as you can probably imagine." But evidently Salmondova could imagine nothing. He stood, with staring eyes and the utmost perplexity. "You won't turn me out, I suppose? Please, or not. You must make a visitor welcome," Ivan Ilyitch went on, feeling that he was confused to a point of unseemly feebleness, that he was trying to smile and was utterly unstable, that the humorous reference to Stefan Nikiforovitch and Trifon was becoming more and more impossible. But, as ill luck would have it, Selmadova did not recover from his stupefaction, and still gazed at him with a perfectly idiotic air. Ivan Ilyitch winced. He felt that in another minute something incredibly foolish would happen. "I am not in the way, am I? I'll go away," he faintly articulated, and there was a tremor at the right corner of his mouth. But Selmadova had recovered himself. "Good heavens, Your Excellency! The honor!" he muttered, bowing hurriedly. "Gracious, sit down, Your Excellency," and recovering himself still further, he motioned with both hands to a sofa before which a table had been moved away to make room for the dancing. Ivan Ilyitch felt relieved and sank on the sofa. At once one flew to move the table up to him. He took a cursory look around and saw that he was the only person sitting down. All the others were standing, even the ladies, a bad sign. But it was not yet time to reassure and encourage them. The company still held back, while before him, bending double, stood Selmadov, utterly alone, still completely at a loss, and very far from smiling. It was horrid. In short, our hero endured such misery at the moment when his Haroun al-Rashidi-like descent upon his subordinates for the sake of principles might as well have been reckoned as a heroic act. But suddenly a little figure made its appearance beside Selmadova, and began bowing. To his inexpressible pleasure and even happiness, Ivan Ilyitch at once recognized him as the head clerk of his office, Akim Petrovitch Zubikov, and though, of course, he was not acquainted with him, he knew him to be a businesslike and exemplary clerk. He got up at once and held out his hand to Akim Petrovitch. His whole hand, not 2 fingers. The latter took it in both of his with the deepest of respect. The general was triumphant. The situation was saved. And now, indeed, Selmadov was no longer, so to say, the second person, but the third. It was possible to address his remarks to the head clerk in his necessity, taking him for an acquaintance and even an intimate one.